Howdy Twitchers, welcome back to DJ Time's Twitch channel. And as we get closer to our annual trade show and convention, DJ Expo, which we recently rebranded DJX, our Twitch channel will preview some of the events that we'll present to you this coming August 9th to 12th at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino Atlantic City. And this week, we bring you Boston-based DJ VJ Joshua Carl, who's made big waves on Twitch. At DJX, Carl will bring together a panel of Twitch DJs who have adapted to the platform and raised their games. And they'll explain how they've twitched their way to great success. With Carl at the helm, the session titled Live Streaming, Partnering and Twitching to the Top will feature Arabian Prince, Miss Ninja, Chubby Chub, Flipside, and Neil Jackson. And they'll tackle a variety of pressing Twitch-related topics. As for Carl himself, he's been spinning since 1987, working all kinds of genres through a variety of formats in all sorts of venues. For many years, he's moderated DJ Expo's video jock seminars, and he's delivered plenty of useful knowledge to the DJ industry. Additionally, it must be noted that Carl has served his country with honor. As a U.S. Army reservist, he served in Iraq as a combat medic. Upon returning to the States, he continued his service in the reserves as a medic and an instructor in battlefield medicine. His story, his DJ story, is probably unlike any other. So with all that said, welcome aboard, Josh. Or is it Sergeant
Thanks.
Carl?
I walked away as an E6, so Staff Sergeant is fine. But Josh, or JC, I don't know how it happened. Everybody just calls me JC, so.
All good, all good. So I noticed you're rocking a San Francisco hat today.
Yeah.
Not a Boston cap.
I have like 11 Boston hats, but anybody who knows me knows I'm a baseball fan first, a Red Sox fan second, and a National League style play fan third. So
wow, you were really trying to win over this Atlanta Braves fan's heart. So yeah, well, before we get into the whole thing, yeah, oddly, I'm a strange bird too. I'm a lifelong Atlanta Braves fan, but I'm a longtime Yankee season ticket holder simply by virtue of the fact that I live here in New York. In fact, I saw your Red Sox last Friday, but it was too damn hot to cheer.
That was rough. That was a rough game.
Well, no, it was rough to be there. The Red Sox won that one 4-0.
Oh, that one. But, I thought you were gonna jump on the 9-1 loss or whatever it was.
Nah, I'm not that guy. I'm just not that guy.
It's funny. Either am I. When people hear Red Sox fan, they think of like the salivating New England Patriots Red Sox fans. That's not me. Yeah. I've always loved baseball. My favorite player is Willie Mays and Tim Raines. So I have a partial affinity to obviously the Giants and the Expos.
Okay.
So I also have an Expos hat. So
I used to, yeah, back in the day. Yeah, well, to tell you how old I am, the first game I saw in person, Henry Aaron was playing. So,
wow.
Yeah, so it was a while ago. So let's move into the DJ world here, because we can go down the baseball rabbit hole, and we probably will in Atlantic City at some point. But sure. Let's get into music. Tell me, what got you into music to begin with? Was there a first song or an artist that you really loved? What got you going there?
This guy right here.
Oh no! Are you kidding?
When I was
You're
a kid,
an MTV guy, huh?
I am. So I was, I'm in my 40s, and I am like the target audience for that initial MTV, and I had an older stepbrother who was really into like progressive rock. So like he used to listen to like Asia and Yes and stuff like that. So I got that from him. My mother always listened to like whatever the adult contemporary soul was of the time. So like Aretha Franklin and Whitney Houston and stuff like that. My dad listened to like proper blues, like artists who I probably couldn't even recite to you who they were. But on Sundays, he'd listen to the Beatles. There was like a syndicated Beatles Sunday morning show. So I'd hear that. And then I'd hear like 2 hours of just straight like blues, just dirty, nasty blues music. So that's kind of when
the Muddy Waters of the world.
Yeah,
James. Okay.
All that
things that influenced the Rolling Stones.
right, as a kid, you're just like, this is, man, and then you get a little older, and of course I was part of like the golden era of hip hop, so I
Sure.
was huge into Public Enemy and stuff like that. But at the same time, I was also into, like Anthrax and Metallica. So I think a lot of people in my age group were sort of like a kid in a candy store, just chasing whichever candy dangled in front of them. Like, oh,
Right.
I like this too. I like this too. Well,
And of
you're a
course
hip
there
hop
was,
guy.
yeah, but and of course there was that moment when rock and hip hop sort of took over the world for a little
Of
while.
course, which was a beautiful thing for someone like me, because like I was like, this is exactly what I like. Like when Anthrax and Public Enemy got together, I
Hmm.
liked both of them before I even knew they knew each other. Obviously we're well aware of Public Enemy dropping Anthrax's name in a song, but you
Hmm.
never, as a kid, you never like, those guys know each other. You never thought that. Like the guys who like Anthrax wear denim jackets with patches on the back and smoke cigarettes
Right.
and had long hair. Public Enemy was a completely different thing. You never thought. And then when that happened, I was like, this is why I'm here. This is my thesis.
Right, right. And even compared to other hip hop, once you got to Public Enemy's second record, which sounded completely different from the first
Mhm.
record, the production on it, you just went, what are they doing? How are they doing this? Why does this sound so busy and dense and incredible? Of
Yeah.
course, over time, you hear the stories and you meet, Keith Shockley at the expo, and you ask him those questions. But I remember listening to that stuff in Athens, Georgia in the 1980s, and literally my brain exploded when that second Public Enemy record came out.
Yeah, that one's my favorite too. As much as the first one's amazing, A Nation of Millions is amazing. But even like their second and third album for me were the albums that really kind of were my soundtrack, to the point where my senior year in high school, our English like end of the year project was to like break down a song and like present it to the class, like where
Mhm.
where its roots are in and why and I did by the time I get to Arizona. And of
Okay.
course, I'm probably, it was the whitest school in the whitest part of Massachusetts,
Right.
and I'm rocking a Public Enemy shirt. I've got a Public Enemy medallion. I've got lines in
Right.
my hair, and I'm up there talking about, by the time I get to Arizona, like I have any idea what that really means. Years
Yeah. And
later,
that,
obviously, you come back around to it, and you're like, okay, at least that was, I had my goals set in a proper direction. I might have been young and stupid and just being like, hey, I really like this group and I really get behind this message. And then years later, you're like, that was pretty prolific. Like, now
yeah.
it's commonplace, but
Yeah, but also it's funny how some things don't change
of
as it
course.
relates to that song, and it wasn't just Arizona. I say as a native Georgian, but so let me talk about you transitioning into DJing. Now, were you looking at Yo MTV Raps? Were you watching the
Mhm.
Herbie Hancock video, that kind of stuff? What was the stuff that made you say, I want to do that?
It's really hard for me to come back and pick a person. Like, I feel like so many people were watching the Grammys that year when DST did, the scratching on screen. And I literally remember sitting on my living room floor with my parents watching like the live performance of Rocket and being like, never mind the song, never mind the scratching aspect, just like the whole animatronics thing. I was just like,
Yeah,
this is amazing.
the robots. Yeah.
It blew my mind. But that, I felt like that was a seed that didn't really pop until later in life. Like, um, when I really got into hip hop in the early 90s, me and my friends, like I said, we had hammer pants, we had patent leather shoes, we had polka dotted shirts. Some of my friends, and again, these are like as white as paper friends, were trying to figure out how to make their bone straight blonde hair into high
Mhm.
top fades. That was me and my friends. And that's when I started seeing the DJ in the background and being like, what's he doing? And one of the first cuts that ever blew my hair back, and it's kind of serendipitous because years later he sat on the video panel with us, was when Scratch did the scratch, DJ Scratch did the scratch on Give the People by EPMD. I
Mhm.
remember hearing that and just being like, I've heard the and the the wigga wigga and all that stuff, but I had never heard somebody scratch the Ladies and Gentlemen sample the way he scratched it. And that was the first time that I was ever like, I need to figure out how they make the sound. This is
Right.
amazing. And then of course you start watching MTV Raps, and they start having DJs on the show. You start seeing the gear. You start realizing, oh, that's a mixer. Okay, those are the records. And then ironically, like, you get out of high school and life changes. I joined the army. So I went to basic training. I went to medical school for a year. And by the time I got back, I went to college and I was playing baseball at college for Fitchburg. And the baseball house had horrible music. And I was like, guys, like, I have a turntable and I have a little tiny mixer. Why don't you let me handle the music? And I had like maybe 45 records, and about 15 of them were like compilations. So it was like, play this song, flip it over, and play this song. There was no mixing or no nothing. And then people started giving me money, and I kind of forgot about it for a while. I got out of school, and one day I'm working at the Purple Shamrock in Boston as a bouncer, of all things. Now, anybody that knows me knows I'm not a fighter. I don't think I've been in a fight since, like,
You don't have to be.
seventh
You
grade.
just have to be physically imposing and unafraid.
And well, unafraid, yes, and physically imposing, no.
Well, you can change that with some attitude if you need to.
I was a talker. I used to try to deflate situations by being funny or interjecting in a situation and just trying to diffuse it before it gets out of play. And years later, I learned that what managers look for, that they're like, I need a pit bull, I need a negotiator, and then I need guys that can move bodies.
And for people who don't know, the bars in Boston are no joke. There tends to be a scrap once in a while.
The Purple Shamrock was known as the kind of place that they scrape the eyeballs off the floor at the end of the night. If a fight did not break out between 9 and 2, we were like, what's wrong? What happened? Like, what's going on in the what? Something's up. But it was a blast to play at. And it actually came about, a friend of mine, DJ Massai, was a resident there, and he was another baseball guy. He played baseball for Northeastern, so we'd always talk baseball. And he's like, hey, man, I heard you DJ'd. I'm like, of course. When someone asks you that, it doesn't matter if you're a 40-year guy or a 5-minute guy. You're like, yep, I definitely do.
Sure.
And he's like, cool, I'm going away next weekend. Can you cover? And I'm like, I don't really have the music. He's like, I'll leave my records here. Just bring your mixer and turntable. I was like,
just say yes. Just say yes and figure it all out in the end.
Right. So that's kind of what happened. And it was kind of serendipitous too, that the owner happened to be there. I had a really good, like, seat of my pants lucky set. You know, like, I played, I knew the music to play. The crowd was, I mean, 100% of the praise is due to that crowd that night. If that crowd that night wasn't the way they were, that owner wouldn't have, like, pulled me aside at the end of the night and been like, hey, we want to give you Fridays. Right. And I'm like, this is my first.
You played the right music ever for properly lubricated people.
Exactly. Right. Anybody could have done it. And I think what the difference was in that particular night is not terribly different than what I do now. It's like, I like to kind of interject stuff that maybe you didn't think of hearing. And this is, 1998. So, like, I have, it's not uncommon to be like, oh, playing Rick Springfield or Eddie Money for a crowd is no big deal. But back then, if you were a hip hop DJ, you weren't wasting space in your crate with an Eddie Money record. You're like, no, that's reserved for Biggie. Like, I can't not bring a Biggie record because I'm bringing Eddie Money.
But it's also about the audience you're playing to.
Of course. So, playing Take Me Home Tonight and back to back with It's Tricky in 1990 nowadays seems like no big deal. But in 1998, to bring both those records,
the notion of open format had not really been defined back then. You were sort of stuck to a genre for the most part. You might have like a hip house record that'll get you from one place to the next.
Right.
But that was pretty much it. CNC Music Factory solved a lot of problems.
The Planet Soul Set You Free was like the ultimate transition record. But I had a great night. The owner was like, I want to give you Fridays at the other venue. And then it became, as most of us old guys remember, just chasing vinyl every week, trying to track down, stuff for the week. And that became the rat race for the better part of like 98 to 2005.
Do you remember what you were playing on in the bar? The first setup you were using, was it a pair of Techniques and a mixer?
It was a pair of Techniques. I don't remember the mixer. It's kind of like a car accident, in the sense of, like, what happened, you were there, but you really don't remember. It all kind of just spun around really fast. My first rig was actually a Newmark setup, because I was like, I can't afford Techniques, and the mixer of the moment was the Vestax. That's pretty much what everybody was drooling over. And the
Right.
Rain 52 had just come out about 6 months after using the Newmark setup, which wasn't bad. It was a great setup. It had zero sound dampening in the turntables, so I had a ton of subharmonic feedback, and I was just like, I can't do this. Like every time I play a record, like it would come up, and I'm like shoving napkin. We've all done that stuff. So.
Yeah, 1200. Don't accept substitutes.
Yeah, I finally was like, you know what? I'm making enough. I'm working 2 or 3 nights a week. I'm making enough now where I can justify buying that. I bought a 52, and I've had nothing but Rain mixers ever since.
You notice a lot of your t-shirts are of the Rain variety. So were you doing mobiles at all? Did you have a system that you took out? Did you have mobile entertainers who hired you? How did you transition through that?
Yeah, I had 2 different ways that happened. One was the way most of us club guys, somebody comes up and says, you need to do my wedding. And you go, yeah, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. Here's a card. And then 3 years later, you get a phone call. So there's that.
Right, and then they tell you how much money you can make.
How little.
Well, whatever it is.
Yeah, and then the other thing is I used to be kind of the hired gun for an entertainment company where I kind of preferred it because my hesitancy to leap into mobile has always been the bridezillas, the months of work and all that stuff dealing with the day of. But then I like DJing the wedding. So this company did a really good job of handling all that. They would send me about 2 weeks out sort of a list of the plays and do not plays, the announcements, all that stuff. I'd show up day of, set up, knock out the wedding, and go home. I never met the people before. There was none of that. So of course it wasn't as much money, but for somebody making $300 or $400 a night to like walk away from a wedding where you didn't have to do anything except DJ and make a grand, I was like, this ain't that bad,
Yeah.
So
very quickly, what's your, we'll get into it a little more later, but what's your setup now and why do you use it?
So I'm using a Rain 72 MK2 and 1200s with phase. I also have a Rain 1, and I just got that in the last couple months. And I've adopted to the, I'm blown away by the 1. I'm trying to push them into like making a 1 Pro or a Rain 2 because the shortcomings on the 1 are more shortcomings for performance DJing. Like if you're playing a pub or even a wedding or something where the spotlight isn't on you, you're not like representing your brand, trying to push your brand forward, trying to, be the DJ. The 1 is more than enough. The moving platters are amazing. But the 72 MK2 and the 1200s are amazing. It's been what I've been on.
Well, yeah, Rain's a New England company now, so
now it is.
Feel free to reach out over the border there in Rhode Island. And
I've been down there a few times. Yeah, those good guys.
Yes, absolutely. Chris Roman, shout out to you. So let's talk a little bit about Expo before we get back into your career and some of the interesting moments of them. You've been coming to DJ Expo for a long time and usually moderating the VJ related seminar, but this year you'll be handling a live streaming seminar that touches on Twitch. What can Expo attendees expect from this session?
I mean, there's one of the things I wrestled with when coming up with this idea is that the platform already has a way to communicate from viewers and streamers, but not in the sense of like, we're going to sit down and we're going to help you kind of thing. So that's why I reached out to a handful of partners and some guys who aren't partnered, but are, on the forward thinking progressive end of the tech side of things. Because I feel like when people want to know how to do things, they look at most of the guys that I have on this panel, like, oh, have you seen this guy stream, or this guy's stream is like this, have you seen that? That's why I reached out. And of course there's so many other guys that obviously, and girls, that I left off, but for the most part, what I want is people to come away excited to stream, able to make money in ways they didn't maybe think about before they started looking at Twitch, because there are other avenues, not just Twitch, just streaming in general, giving mobile options to, it seemed more pertinent when we were in lockdown and people were still having
Right.
weddings. The idea of like, oh, we can stream your wedding for people who can't travel here, and then you can interact with them. That doesn't seem like it's going to be a thing, but there are a lot of people who still are not traveling or have no desire to
Yep.
travel.
Yeah,
So, you know,
we have two other live stream related sessions there. We have Vernique Fields from Philadelphia, and we also have Mike Marquez from here in New York. You know, live streaming. You know, who knew that it would turn into what it's become?
of course. And for me personally, it was yet another sort of thing for my creative mind to sort of like dig into and kind of conquer. That's kind of the way I think. It was the same with video DJing. I actually find myself over the last year with the same sort of like rewards and payoffs from a nerd aspect
Right.
digging into the software. Like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I first started doing video, it was like, oh, what's this, Vegas? I can make video edits in this. Oh, Photoshop, or okay, I think I can learn Photoshop. All right, we can start messing around with this. And then you see that blossom into this like building blocks for creativity. And that, to be honest, was even, and I think you guys might even saw it with the video panels. Video DJ panels were always good, but in the last couple of years, there was so many things out there for people to like, I'll go on YouTube and watch a video on how to do this. And it was like,
Right.
well, you know, you can come to the expo. We're going to have the video DJ panel again. And people always walk away. That in all my years of DJing, I never have so many people stop me like in the hallways of the expo and be like, I learned so much from that panel. It's going to change my business so much. And that's really the nod or the payoff of having those panels. So I'm hoping this will be the same thing. Like, hey man, I would have never thought to like live stream this bar mitzvah to this kid's friends because they can't make it, you know. And now I have the tech savvy to be able to do that and actually monetize it. So
Right. Well, that's the whole point of DJ Expo, and that's why we've been doing it every year since 1990. So, as a longtime DJ yourself, what do you like most about DJ Expo? The stuff that you can talk about anyway.
so I mean, it's changed over the years, and you probably remember our relationship was actually birthed out of our mutual friend Paul Daly, who used to do shows with Terry and Toad and those guys, and I was the young guy with that collective of guys. So
Sure.
I was like, I would just ride along and I'd support them as I could, as friends do, and
Yeah, the
then
whole
over the
Boston
years,
crew.
right, the whole guys would come down. And as a young guy at the expo, I was always overwhelmed in the best way possible. Like the halls and going to the shows, I was like, this needs to happen more than once a year. Like it was maddening that I had to wait.
Yeah.
It was maddening that I had to wait another year and to go back to expo, and then to as a young DJ. And I think that's the big thing is just like, it's when you're there, there's a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Like country club sort of banter. Like the guys you only see once a year. You go out and you have drinks, you go out and you have dinner, and you're like, these guys all know each other. As a young guy, that's kind of intimidating. But everybody was that young guy at one point. I was that young guy at one point. I'm sure everybody that goes there was like, I remember going there in the 90s and, you know, seeing Rooney and Second Nature bust out the DVJs for the first time. Like that sticks in my head like it happened yesterday. I'll never forget. And I've told this story before. I was with Paul and Terry in our room, and they're like, hey man, one of the Pioneer guys wants to bring the DVJs up here and give you guys like a sneak peek. And it was Rooney. I had no idea who he was at that point, you know, because video DJing hadn't really been established as, you know, these guys, Rooney and Crispy, these guys are the guys that are kicking this thing off. So they bring these DVJs up to the room and we hook it up to the TV, and all of us were just like, this is going to change DJing completely, you know. So that was one of those things at DJ Expo that always in my head, it was like, man, I was there for that. I saw that in my room. I mean, obviously not everybody's going to have that experience, but you know, just like, it's pretty epic. So
Yeah, but there's also a certain camaraderie, and I always caught that with the Boston guys. Of course, you know, some of them, like, you know, Terry only wants to talk about the Red Sox. But but there was always a real bond there. And obviously, we always loved to go to the Irish pub or do whatever we had to do. But I knew that you guys were taking in a lot of the show, and I know that you were very serious about DJing and going back to New England with a lot of things that you learned. I guess that 5 hour ride back wasn't so difficult after the show.
No, it's all geeking out. It's like it's the
Yeah.
same electric banter that you have after you walk out of a good movie with your friends. That's all you
Mhm.
talk about the ride home. And that it was no different every single time we drive home from Expo. Like I said, we do get a room occasionally, but we've kind of leaned towards the last couple of years because we're getting older now. We get an Airbnb with five and
Mhm.
six guys. We make sure it has like a barbecue pit and we make sure it has Wi-Fi. So
Right.
this year, a couple of the panelists, Darth Vader, Stevie B, and Billy Lane and I got a house together that we're going to try to make it sort of like a stream house. So, like, in the off hours, we'll occasionally stream from there and give people some, insight and, maybe even get some people being like, oh, next year, one of the first times I came down, the Smash Vision guys and the Crooklyn Clan guys, before I was with Crooklyn Clan, got
Mhm.
a house. And it was like a 15-bedroom house with all these video DJs in there. And I stumbled into that house and I'm just like, same thing. Just like, these are all the guys I've been playing their edits for years, and now I'm hanging out with them. Like, this is kind of amazing. So that's the aspect of Expo, especially in recent years, has become a big thing for me. Now that I'm on the other side of that equation where I'm teaching more than I'm learning. I mean, I still learn, but my goal down there is to pass the knowledge on. And then it's, barbecuing with the guys, going
Mhm.
to, the deck at Scores to see, the Senate guys and what their party is going, on a
Mhm.
certain night, or going to the Wednesday night party and seeing these guys I get to see once a year, or
Right.
going to Gordon Ramsay's restaurant and dropping $175 on a steak, which we do every year, but it's
Yeah.
amazing. It's an
Yeah.
amazing time. So,
It's once a year. It ain't gonna kill you. So,
right.
let me get back into your career a little bit. We left off at one point, so I have to ask you, as a Army reservist, how did you balance that life with the DJing before you were deployed?
It was really hard, man. I had to, well, if you guys that don't know, being a reservist, one weekend a
Once a month.
month,
Yeah.
you go away. Sometimes it's local. Most of the time it's local. 8 or 10 months of the year it's local. But you're getting up at 4:30 to be there at 5:30, and then you're there from 5:30 in the morning, usually to 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, and then you go home and you usually go right to bed because you're so friggin' tired and get up and do it again on Sunday. Now, for the most part, I always took that Saturday off, or that Friday night or Saturday night off. There was no way, but there was a few times where I went to drill, got out, got home, took a 2 hour nap, drove into the city, DJ'd, left at 2:30, got home, took a 2 hour nap, got up, went back to drill and did it again. And then I'd sleep all day Monday. I was just dead. But when you're in your 20s,
It's a different story.
yeah, man. Like I watch TV for too long and I'm tired now. So
Yeah, right. Um, let me get this straight. Were you active duty and then reserve, or did you go directly to the reserves?
no, so I went directly in the reserves, but because I
Okay.
went for orthopedics, the school for that is actually a full-time commitment. So I was a full-time student in Texas for just over a year, and then I was at Walter Reed for 3 months. Basically, they call it OJT. It's like on-the-job training, basically acting as an
Mhm.
orthopedic specialist for Walter Reed Hospital. And then
Right.
once I got out of there, it was once a month until 2005 when I went to Iraq.
So yes, you were deployed, and you were there for what, 12 months?
Well, so you can't be in country for more than 12 months, but what they don't tell you is as a medic,
Stop
you have
loss.
to, yeah, you have, well, stop
Yeah.
loss too, but you have to have all
Mhm.
your training um, up to date before you step foot in country. So we actually um, got deployed in May. I got elected to go early, so I actually went in April, and then we were in Wisconsin and Texas all the way up to November. And then November we went to Iraq and we were there for a year and then came home. And then you're home in country here in the States for about a month, like making sure they've gotten really good at handling like mental health and stuff like that. I actually got rated for PTSD and stuff like that, and they're getting on the radar for that is a lot better than even in the 90s, like the Desert War era guys.
Hmm.
And of course, like my dad was in Vietnam, his generation, man, he's finally just starting to get in the last couple of years, like sort of like the support he needs for being in that sort of
Yeah, I
engagement. So
mean, I'm a Army brat myself. In fact, both of my parents were in the Army. My mother was in the Women's Army Corps. She was a whack, just like the Cheap Trick song said. And so, yeah, I grew up at Fort Benning, and I worked civil service jobs for the Army and the Navy. Both my parents are buried in Arlington. We're a Gold Star family, so it's
nice.
near and dear to my heart, guys like you. Um, but I want to ask you, what was your experience in the conflict? I mean, what were your responsibilities and where did
Mhm.
you see action?
So we started out, and actually we're the first and last unit to ever do this. We started out in um, up in northern Iraq in Mosul, and we were a cache. So it's not like MASH, it's not tense. It's actually a hard compound. But Mosul was it was a wild west. I survived a handful of mortar attacks, and for a short while, I was actually the commander's bodyguard. So I used to carry double rounds, so 300 rounds of ammunition, full armor, like the full armor. Unlike so the medics, we run around in scrubs, but there are people in our unit who aren't medics, so they're required to carry all the stuff you need to carry when you're in country. And man, we got shot at quite a bit, and we mortar attacks was the biggest thing. You'd be in a dead sleep,
Mhm.
3:30 in the morning, the
Incoming.
alarms would start going off. You
Yeah.
jump out of bed, you throw on your Kevlar, you grab your weapon, you run out. And the way it used to work was in between where we slept were these concrete like boxes, and you just dive into one and just sit it out. Once I took over the job as the commander's bodyguard, I had to run about 150 yards to the command, and the command was surrounded by like 10-foot concrete slabs. And man, this one time, like they unleashed on us, and it was the first and last time I heard a mortar round from at least 15 feet away. It was right on the other side of the wall. If you've ever heard a thunder crack that's so close to you, you hear the snap,
Mhm.
and that's what a mortar round sounds like. And that's when I was like, you know what, guys, I appreciate that you guys have the confidence in me to be the commander's bodyguard, but not for nothing, I don't want to get out of Iraq and not have the job experience. What'd you do for the year and you in Iraq? I was a bodyguard. I don't want to do that in my life. So I went to school for medical training. So after that, I went back into the ER. And most of my time, as you can imagine, blast injuries are orthopedic injuries. So amputations, broken bones, and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So basically, my day was spent sitting there waiting, as most medical professionals do, and dealing with the people that come in. Oh, I was playing softball. Oh, I was at the gym. I dropped a weight on my foot. And then all of a sudden, hey, we got 16 incoming. US, they'll give you a basic idea of their injuries. And my job was to be on the orthopedic surgeon's hip, and he would just like say to me what we're going to do with the patients. He's like, this guy's stable in place, splint him, reduce that broken leg back, get it back in line as best you can. We'll see him in the OR in a couple hours. This guy, don't worry about it. He's not going to make it. Just make him, that kind of thing. So it was a lot of, for lack of better terms, blood and guts,
Sure.
which you get to desensitize to. And what helped with that was the guys on my team were the funniest, goofiest, outside the pocket guys you've ever met. Like 90% of our time was spent trying to make each other laugh. And that really, really kind of helped with that situation, getting
Did
through it. But
did music help at all? Were you still attached to
yeah,
music at all?
I was being over there. When I was there, we were often in what they call blackout, which means like all communication in and out of the base would be shut down. So there was
Mm.
no streaming. I had a CD book with a bunch of mixes, like mixed CDs that guys have made over the years. I collected. I
Sure.
used to listen to that a lot. The thing at that point was there was this thing on the computers called the SIPRnet, and basically it was a hard drive somewhere that everybody would dump music and movies on. So you would just go in and log on, and you could watch anything. and I mean anything,
Mhm.
or listen to anything. And that's kind of how you got through. It was kind of pre-controller. If 2 years had gone by, I probably would have sent for a controller to go over there, because everybody knew I was a DJ, and they were like, "Hey, we're gonna try to have a cookout," and I'm like, what do you want me to do, guys? I'm like, it was 2005. I was managing a record store when we got deployed. Like Final Scratch had just come out. I'd just seen Diesel Boy use it for like one of the first times, so it was like, there's not much I can do. Technology wasn't quite there yet.
So what was your last day in country?
Well, I mean, the ends are really easy because you're just out processing. But
Mhm.
towards the end, like I said, halfway through my deployment, two things happened. One, my son was born, so I scheduled my leave time, because you get 2 weeks, to come home. My wife pushed my son out. I said, "Hi, how you doing? I'll be back," and took off. And then my unit actually moved from Mosul to Al Assad. Now, Al Assad was the Iraqi Olympic training grounds, like in the 80s and 90s.
Mhm.
And it was super cool, but super creepy, because you would get into these facilities and you'd find a door, and that door would go down a level and then go down another level. And then there'd be like a locked off door that no one can open. And it was like, that was definitely a torture chamber. Like, no doubt
Yeah,
people
my
tortured in
my
there.
co my cousin served in Iraq, and she was like a graphic artist, but she lived in Saddam's palace, and there was all kinds of weirdness going on
Yeah,
in the same manner that you described.
Um, I saw the palace once. I didn't get to go in it, when I was acting as commander's commander's bitch, as we used to call it.
Mhm.
He used to go to Baghdad all the time and to all these places, so I used to go to them with him and just walk around. And being commander is just like, he'd get tours of these places with other commanders and stuff, and I'm just in the back with all the other commanders, bodyguards, just kind of in the cut waiting for shit to go down. Um, but yeah, I got to see some pretty, like, I mean, wild stuff over there, not just from the war aspect of it, but from like the seeing another country and the way their architecture and the way their people lived is just, it's kind of like, wow, it doesn't translate off the screen like when
Yeah, it
you
would have been
watch,
better under different circumstances. I'm
of course,
I'm
I
sure.
would have would have preferred a guided tour.
Absolutely. So when you come back, you're still in the reserves. Your
Mhm.
MOS is still what, 68 whiskey? Is that what it is?
Yeah, 68
Yeah.
whiskey Papa One. So the Papa
Okay.
One is the orthopedic identifier.
Okay.
So
That's the MOS kids. That's the, what is that? Military occupational
specialty.
something specialty. Yeah. That means what is your job? So, but when you come back, did you start DJing again? I mean, that has got to be the most intense experience. You get your
Mhm.
PTSD. The trauma is deep. The things that you've seen, the things that you've experienced,
It,
the
it
brain is not
I
really ready to handle that stuff. So you have to come back and deal with it somehow. How'd you manage?
I eased into it. I was actually said to myself and my wife, we're like, I'm only going to take the gigs that I love. And now, for those of us that know, there's the gigs that you take that pay the bills, and then there's the gigs that you'd probably do for free because you love them so much. I'm like, I'm only going to take these. I'm only going to play like funky Jack in House and breaks,
Hmm.
and some good, like, Carl Coxey kind of techno and stuff like that. Those gigs just started falling off the wayside. My record store closed. My competing record stores closed, and I was
Hmm.
it's kind of over the top, but I came back and I was a man without a country. I was like, where's all my record stores? What the hell is Serato? What happened?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't understand any of this. Like, that
I was gonna say a
happened
lot happened.
when I was gone.
Right,
So
right.
coming back, I was just like, I had to get up to speed. And fortunately, I happened to catch the attention of the right people at Serato, and they were like,
Mhm.
"Hey, you know what? This is Serato Video. It's coming out soon. This is, you already have a relationship with Rain. Their mixer supports it." Got rolled into like their beta team
Mhm.
working on Serato and Serato, Serato Video. Um, and then, like, gig wise, my PTSD is really not terribly dissimilar from people who work in really busy crisis centers and ORs,
Mhm.
ERs here. I wasn't dodging bullets. I wasn't, having friends of mine die in my arms and those horrible things that you see a lot of people deal
Mhm.
with. Mine was more like, I saw a lot of dead children. I saw a lot of mangled, beat up children. I saw a lot of dead. I had people die in my hands. You know, they came in alive and they're dead by the time I'm done dealing with them. It's a different kind of trauma as a medic as it is for, say, like a soldier. Same church, different pew. You know what I mean? So my sort of PTSD is more like nightmares, not sleeping, not being able to go to sleep, you know, like not being able to shut your head down. Also like the guilt of not feeling like you did enough, that kind of stuff.
Right. When I see you in Atlantic City, I have a book for you.
Oh,
It's all about trauma, physical and otherwise. A lot of
mhm.
PTSD. It's about new and different ways of dealing with it. So we will have that conversation.
Excellent.
So yeah,
And
I'll
now, if I remember right, you guys are always sort of into whiskey, right? Was that
here
sort of
and
a
there.
thing?
Well, you know, I'm more of a Guinness guy, but you know,
Gotcha.
a shot of Irish whiskey ain't the
I
worst thing
feel
in the
like
world.
every time I ever stepped foot in the Irish pub, it was just whiskey going everywhere, and I was just like, as a younger
Uh,
guy, it's intimidating. But over the pandemic, I've actually developed a real tongue for it, and I started like diving deeper and buying. You know,
well,
I'm
like
not an alcohol.
single
Don't
malts
worry.
or
Yes, mostly like proper like Scotch single malt, so a couple
okay.
blends. But it's become a thing, and don't worry anybody, this isn't a red flag. You know, we're not going to talk about PTSD and then my trips to an
We
alcoholic. It's
transition immediately into alcohol. Yeah. Right. What else are you
um
doing?
right,
Um,
and just
no, but
drinking
yeah, right. So we will tip the bottle a little bit at the Irish pub, I am sure.
for sure.
Um, so we got a couple minutes left. I wanted to fast forward how you got through the lockdown and what were you doing DJ wise during this time? I know you were twitching away and connecting
Mhm.
with a lot of other DJs.
I mean, that's kind of the part of it. I feel like a lot of DJs that gravitated towards each other kind of all had the same mindset. There wasn't too many people that were like, well, I should say this: the people that made it to Twitch or decided to stream on some level recognized a lot of either skill or passion or camaraderie in other DJs, and we're like, hey man, I'd rather be friends with these 15 guys that I met on Twitch than anybody in my market. Not to say anything bad about my market, because I have my friends in my market too, but it's finding um friends, and even though this isn't a war, but this was a pandemic, this was a pretty legitimate um crisis. And
I think you could say that. Yeah.
and you develop bonds, and you develop, you know, saves and shit like that,
Mhm.
and friends, and I think that's kind of what pushed a lot of us, you know, like, you know, wanting to be expressive. And you know, you can't just stop, and I use this term so lightly because real artists deserve the term, but as an artist, not being able to express yourself is crippling.
Yeah.
It hurts. It legitimately hurts. And some of my comrades who didn't get on and didn't stream are done. They're not DJing anymore. And I'd like to think, if like, hey man, if you had just put your toe in the water for a year, you know, you don't have to stream every day, but like, you know, a couple times, and you probably would have been like, hey, pandemic's
Mhm.
over, I'm ready to hop in. Instead, they're just like, I'm done. I can't, you know, I haven't DJ'd in 18 months and I don't really want to now. So it's kind of good and bad. You know, it thins the herd a bit, you know, things like that. But
Oh
at
yeah.
the same time,
Forces you to make some heavy decisions.
yeah, at the same time, it boosts creative juices. You know, I got to play a lot of stuff that I genuinely liked. My Monday shows is all about playing stuff that I never get to play that I think is good. You know,
So what are you
and
loving these days? What are you into?
older stuff. Like, you know, like in my sets, I'm playing, you know, like I rediscovered classic songs that you would never really work in, like Dear God by Ecstasy. You know, like that was a
Mhm.
song that I loved when it came out. The Cure and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, of course, I still love Public Enemy. I still love playing New Jack Swing. I still love
Mhm.
playing Weird Al. I like playing like proper electronic music, like from like the 98 to 2003 era. Like I loved all
Mhm.
that, like Tim Deluxe and all the Hooge and Bedrock records and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So the best part about Twitch is you don't have to worry about losing the dance floor. More
Right.
so when you take a hard left turn musically, that catches people like, oh, we're doing this now. This is dope. So that's what I liked about Twitch, is that anybody who watches my shows really gets an idea, especially on Mondays, of where my musical tastes lie. I was playing like legitimate polka records because I'm like, this is a contemporary artist who did like a polka song, and I love it. It's amazing.
And for those who don't know, what is your regular Twitch schedule at this point?
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then occasional pop-ups. So Monday is like Afternoon Delight, 4 o'clock. And like I said, it's almost like purposely outside the pocket. I will play some obvious stuff that works, but for the most part, I'm always like looking in my library for things that don't have any plays. Cause we have that play count thing now. And I'm like, I've never played this song. I know it. I'm going to play it. Who cares if nobody knows? Somebody the other day was like, play something. I have a thing on my stream where somebody can elect to change the format, and they get to pick it. And they're like, Christian rock. I'm like, oh, I got a couple Striper songs lined up, so like, I love that. You know what I mean? It's like, when do you get to play Striper? And Striper's not a bad band. Or Cinderella. I love Cinderella.
You're part of the hair metal era.
Yes,
the right age.
That's what I'm saying. It was like one day it was Public Enemy, the next day it was Winger. So now, granted, I don't like Warrant. I don't think I've ever played Cherry Pie, but I do like some of those other bands a lot. So Rat, absolutely love Rat. So like, Rat 1 minute, and then of course R.I.P. Biz Markie the next.
And R.I.P. Biz Markie and Bring the Noise. So that's terrific, Josh. Thanks so much for sharing your time and some of your very intense memories. I greatly appreciate it. And for everybody else out there, DJ Expo is at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino, Atlantic City, August 9 to 12. And on Tuesday, August 10th, Josh will be helming his live streaming panel. And I think we're going to probably have an event and a meetup at least afterwards. Details to come for all the Twitchers. But thanks again, Josh. Thanks for your service, and thanks for DJing, and thanks for everything that you do at DJ Expo. We greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it, man.
All right.